Good morning. I'm gonna wait just a few minutes, see if anybody else hops on. Otherwise, this might be a little quick. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
Uh, awesome. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. The sun has decided it's gonna come up blindingly over the mountain right in my face where I set up. Where are you at?
I'm in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, nice. I'm gonna be in
Yeah.
Florida in 2 weeks
Nice.
for All-Star Cheer World Championships with
Oh, fun.
my 17-year-old son and my 15-year-old daughter.
Oh, cool. Your son does it too?
Yeah. I think this is our eighth season,
Wow, that's
maybe.
cool.
Yeah, it was all his idea, and his little sister copied along with him. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. Well, we'll get started, and if anybody else hops in, I've got it set up where I can see when people join, so we can do a quick pause and stuff. So,
Cool.
I'm gonna do like the brief introduction since it's a recorded video, just so we can chop it up into things. And feel free to just pop in with verbal questions. Don't use the chat if it's just the two of us. Just interrupt me. I teach better that way anyway, and this is better as a discussion than it is a lecture. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to those of you guys on the East Coast. My name is Jennifer Hoadley. I am the Director of Curriculum at the Pacific Birth Institute. And today we are going to be talking about maintaining identity through marriage and motherhood, which somebody who's been a midwife for coming up, oh my goodness, 12 years, I think last month. It's something that was never really taught to me, but that I have come to observe in my clients over the years and have developed strategies for discussions through prenatal care to help prevent the breakdown of relationships and to make parenthood maybe slightly more enjoyable or more manageable in those early months where it can be so difficult. Before we jump in, I do want to remind everybody that we do have our retreat coming up in January of 2026 in Kona. We do still have rooms available and conference tickets available. You can find those at pacificbirthinstitute.com. Also coming up live this week for sale, we have started putting together documentation templates. And I think our first package that's going to be available is a bunch of prenatal. And those package include a scenario, an example of how to use the template, and then a blank template. So for use in your initial prenatal, how to talk to clients about all their different labs. It's going to have consent documents available, and it's going to go from their initial visit, the 28-week labs, ultrasounds, group V strap. It's going to have a little bit of everything in it. So for those of you that are maybe starting up small independent practices, if you don't want to create everything from scratch, it's a great resource. It's a financially attainable resource where you're going to have everything you need without having to break the bank, and also a cheat sheet on how to use it all. So definitely check those out. Um, yeah, and then preceptors, don't forget to use the preceptor codes that are available to get discounts for all of your students on the Pro Birth Assistant program so that you can get your students up and rolling and be a set of helpful hands in the birth room as quickly as possible. So with all that said, we're going to jump right in. So birth is an extremely transformative experience, not only physically for the body, but it drastically changes relationship dynamics for everyone involved. So we oftentimes, if you hop on Reddit or TikTok, I'm sure we can all see people complaining, oftentimes men complaining about how they don't understand why their wives aren't doing the things they used to do all the time, or women complaining about how they don't understand why their husbands aren't, equal partners in all of this. And I think a lot of that comes from societally ingrained like gender roles and lack of communication that oftentimes we just are so eggshelling around relationships that we just think we do the things that we think the other person wants us to do. And we don't speak up for ourselves often enough, and nobody's necessarily on the same page at the same time. And then when we throw a baby into the mix and sleep deprivation into the mix, all of a sudden that is just kindling for a firestorm of things. So super common challenges that exists once we enter the role of parent is loss of personal identity. Oftentimes in relationships, when it's just you and your partner, you are able to keep a grip on pieces of your personal identity, your own friend group, your own career, your own hobbies. Maybe you have shared hobbies with your partner, but you're still able to do some of your own things. But adding a child into the mix significantly restricts the amount of free time that you have available to yourself and to you as a couple unit. And so I like to think of the dynamic of parenthood as a facet of who you are as a woman. And then your role as a partner is a completely separate bucket of your identity. And then you have your individual identity. We have who we were before we ever met our partner. And that person still exists, and that person is still important, and that person still needs taken care of. And then we have our role as partner, and that person still exists when we become a mom. But that person in that relationship still needs cared for and taken care of outside of the role of parenthood. And then we have the role as parent. And so I think it's extremely important that very early on in prenatal visits that we take advantage of those visits when the partners are present to start talking about these dynamics and start talking about it in very general terms, because assume nothing about how their current dynamic works. Um, and what works for them may not be a relationship that works for you. So just be very open. Something that might feel very limiting and controlling for us might be something that they're very consenting and engaged in, especially if they come from very like religious or conservative backgrounds and they're very used to and accepting of those gender role dynamics. For other people, that might feel very constricting and upsetting. So we're not trying to upset their dynamic. Instead, what we're trying to do is engage with them in the place where they're at and get them to start thinking about how things are going to change as we add the responsibilities of parenthood so that they can be supportive of each other and so that they know what to expect before the baby arrives so that there's no ambiguity in what's going to happen and to help prevent miscommunication or fights and reminding people that none of us are mind readers. Like I can't know what you expect me to do if you don't tell me, and you can't know what I expect you to do if I don't tell you. And so it's super important in those early months of pregnancy to sit down and talk about like, hey, so you're planning on breastfeeding. How are you guys going to work it out to make sure that mom's getting enough sleep so that that she's able to take care of the baby during the day while you're at work? Or, hey, are you planning to go back to work? Or are you going to be a stay-at-home mom? And what does that look like? What are the expectations and responsibilities surrounding that? And then, um, I've had to go as deep and as far with families as being like, um, especially if they don't have these conversations in advance and they come in at their 6-week visit and they feel like their relationship's falling apart and that there's no support. Like write down a list. Let's make a list of all the jobs around the house and let's say which ones do you feel comfortable taking on? Which ones do you feel like are easy for you and back and forth and creating like a visual and then um and then having those discussions about like, okay, mom, if you're saying dad's going to take over the dishes, that means you no longer get to tell him how to do it. You're letting him take over that task. That's now his task, his responsibility, which means you have no control over how it's done. The goal is that it gets done. So if he wants to load the dishwasher wrong and have to do 5 loads of dishes to get them all done, that's fine because it's his thing. Like you can't complain about it anymore. As long as the dish that's in the cupboard is clean and the dishes are there when you need them, the job was done and it was done correctly. Just because it wasn't done your way doesn't mean that it was done wrong. And so that's a hard thing for a lot of ladies to let go of. Um, And so it's just small conversations like that are so important in the beginning. And I think can really help prevent some of that postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, um, letting her feel supported and knowing what the support looks like in advance of the birth so that when she's sleep deprived or when they are sleep deprived, there's kind of already a set um list of expectations that they know that they can rely on the other person to be taking care of and taking over, to take some of that emotional labor off of each other's plate. So there's no wondering, there's no confusion about whose job it is to take care of certain specific tasks. And then also stepping further out from that is, identifying other support systems outside of just the partnership. A lot of times I tell families if somebody wants to come over and meet the baby, that the entrance fee is a frozen dinner, or a freezer meal or a gift card or something, that nobody comes over empty-handed, that, it does take a village to raise a baby and a family, and that truly the first 6 weeks of taking care of a baby is just pure survival mode for both mom and baby and dad. And unfortunately, dad oftentimes only gets a few days off work. And so he doesn't really get a ton of adjustment time, which is super unfortunate in our society, and does neglect his emotional needs as well. I don't know, a lot of times as midwives, you say our role is with women, but holding space for men and their emotional needs is also taking care of the women, because sometimes they are more comfortable or just more blunt, because they're not going to hurt our feelings expressing how they're feeling, right? And so they're a little bit more free to talk about that, and then we can sit down with them like, okay, well, how can you say this with her? I have so many conversations over the phone and over text with dads, talking about they're concerned about their wife, or they're, and they just don't know how to say these things, or they feel like everything's falling apart. And I'm like, okay, so I hear what you're saying. Is this what you're saying? Okay, here's some strategies of how you can bring this up. What are your resources? Who do you have around you that can help out with these different things? And just helping them find a gentler way sometimes to express their hurt, their like lack of grounding, their fear. A lot of times fear. Have you ever watched a dad try to undress a baby? They're terrified that they're going to break it. And we just don't come from a generations of super hands-on dads that taught dads how to dad in a way that we kind of expect equal partnership dads to do it. And so they're learning trial by fire. And so to have just a gentle presence that will sit and listen with them, and just help them brainstorm ways where they can communicate with their partner that is supportive and kind, and meets both of their needs, I think is super important. Um, and then I think it's also super, super important to strategize in advance and make a planning. I mean, sometimes even as far as get out a calendar and be like, okay, so outside of parenthood, what are you guys going to do to take care of your relationship? What are you guys going to do to spend one-on-one time together? Who are your resources who can watch your baby? Or what are fun things that you guys like to do now that you're worried you're not going to be able to do in the future? And help them strategize within their finances and their support that's available to them. Can you do a Netflix and takeout dinner at home? And can you promise that you'll do that once a week together, where you have dedicated time together? Or can you go out to a nice dinner and have a babysitter? Like, what works for you guys where you guys can commit to spending time together, to do something fun, and to do an emotional check-in with each other? And just talking about how important that is to nurture the relationship, so that you don't just go into like this autopilot parent mode where you stop having those conversations that are the reason that you guys ever got together in the first place, and that you do it with intention to have fun, and also check in and brainstorm together like problems to or solutions to any problems, and just remind them that the problem is the enemy, and you guys are the ones that are looking for solutions. You're not enemies with each other. Neither one of you is the problem. The fact that something isn't getting done, or that you're tired, or that, that's the problem, and that you guys are the solution solvers in the scenario, and it's your guys' job to work together as like a united front to go after the problem, versus fighting with one another about whose fault something is. Um, and oftentimes I'll have people come in like, a lot of times like, oh, 6 weeks postpartum, bye, see you next pregnancy. If I have a couple that's really struggling, with transition into parenthood, I'll do monthly check-ins for 6, 8 months and give them homework. I'll be like, okay, so I want to see you guys in 4 weeks, and I want you guys to have gone on 2 dates where you did not take the baby with you, or the baby went to someone else's house, and before you come back, and I want each one of you to have spent 2 nights away from the house and away from each other and away from your baby with friends before you come back. And then I want you guys to come back and talk about how that went and what went well and what were the struggles and things like that, so that they have some support and some guidance into maintaining identity um, through this transition, because it's such a huge transition, especially when it goes from no kids to first kid, or moms that are going from career person to stay-at-home mom. And I think that's another one that's um, specifically very challenging. Because a lot of times, we go to school, we get our degree, we get our job, we meet our person, we get married, and then we have a kid, and then we have to look at the finances of, does it make more sense for one of us to stay home, and or like, do we have the preference that one of us stays home, which one stays home? How important is someone's career as a part of their identity to them, and what does losing that mean to them? Is there a plan in the future to return to that in some capacity? And having these discussions well in advance, and a plan to maintain personal growth and personal goals. And even if it's not like financially through the career, but is there a way that the parent who opts to stay home to do the daytime childcare, is there ways to volunteer, or is there continuing education classes that they can be involved in that take up smaller amounts of their time, but they'll still keep them engaged and locked into this facet of their identity that's so important? Does that make sense? Yeah. Is this something that you as a mom have struggled with?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's so relatable, everything you were saying. I think the jump from no kids to one kid is the craziest jump. Um, and then so yeah, I have my husband,
Mhm.
and then I have 3 kids,
Okay, me
6-year-old,
too.
4-year-old, and then an 8-month-old. And I think the biggest jump was the first kid. A second kid gets a little crazy. But the first kid I feel like is the one where you both have to learn how to find time for one another.
Absolutely.
That's where you learn it. And if you can figure that out and get some sort of routine in there, it really can just apply the more
Yeah.
kids you have.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and acknowledging it in advance that, like, hey, this is going to be a challenge. Let's
Yeah.
not wing it. Like, let's care about each other enough to,
Mm-hmm.
as much as we're planning for what kind of car seat to buy and what kind of nursery decor to make, let's actually, with intention, take time for something that's way more important than any of that. Of like,
Yeah.
how are we going to maintain this thing that's so important to both of us, this thing that we planned our entire life around, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I feel like, I don't know, I didn't get any of that in my prenatal education, and I didn't have a great like representation of that with like my parents. I feel like I had pretty traditional parents. I always say they had 45 years of wedded tolerance before my father passed, and
Oh,
you know.
wow.
And they were
That's
good
funny.
parents. Like, they showed up to, all
Yeah.
the sports and all the concerts and stuff like that, but I didn't see them nurturing their relationship. I saw them being parents. I
Mm-hmm.
saw them like just, you know, transition almost wholly, like that their identity was like, we're the parents. I mean, my dad, and I mean, my dad always worked, my mom worked off and on, but it felt like it was something that was super lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you stay home or do you work
I am in school, so
in
I'm a
school?
midwifery student, so that feels like a job a lot.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I know. I mean, we've sort of just figured it out. And I think the biggest thing is just communication. I think a lot of first-time parents too, there's sort of like a naivety there where they just don't even know. They don't even know that they should be being proactive about it.
Right.
You
You don't know
know,
what you don't know.
exactly. You don't know what you don't know. And they're very like, oh, we'll figure it out. Oh yeah, like we'll definitely do date night.
Right.
But then the anxiety sets in, and then like
Mhm.
finding the babysitter sets in, and all
Oh
of
yeah.
that.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, yeah.
How old, so with your first baby, how old were they before you left,
Oh God.
spent time away from them?
Yeah, I think my first, it took a while. It took a couple months
Yeah.
before I could leave her. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
I know
gave me
when,
a lot of anxiety.
yeah, I think my first one, well, I went back to work when he was 2 weeks old, but I took him with me for the first week. And then I went back to work like part-time, but
Hmm.
I was able to have like my dad watched my kiddo one day a week, and then my husband's sister would watch. So I always had family, which was nice.
Mm,
I have never had to deal with the struggle of leaving my child with a stranger, and I don't know how people do that.
yeah.
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 So,
So, I
I
mean,
mean,
that's
I'm to the
another
point
thing to
where like,
touch on is making sure
yeah.
if you have family support, it's acknowledging that like it's a lot easier with like the team
Oh yeah.
all together.
Yeah. When my oldest was 2 months old, my mom moved to California for a job, and I remember crying and saying, "How I can't believe you're leaving me right now because I don't know how to be a mom." And she's like, "We figured it out." And I'm like, "What? I'm not gonna figure it out. You're supposed to show me. Like this is a part of the parenting job you haven't done yet."
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
So it was crazy. And but yeah, so I think it's super important to have these conversations. Like you said, you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't even really think about this for myself when my kids were young, because like my kids are how old are my kids now? 15, 17, and 19. And it wasn't really until they were old enough that I wasn't in the day-to-day survival mode, and I was into my midwifery career because I was a nurse for 10 years before I went back to grad school, where I started seeing a pattern with my patients. And I'm like, these families are suffering. And I was like, oh my God. Like, and so then it was like I was hitting it from we already have a problem and like backing it up. And that's when I was like, I have to start talking to them before, like, can we prevent this? Can we step in and intervene in advance? And it's the dads who are showing up for the prenatal visits. I mean, they're already so much more invested than the moms have to come by themselves all the time, that you're already developing a relationship with them. And so it really is by like that third or fourth visit with them, you can start having these more deep and engaging conversations where it's not just like, hi, how are you feeling? Does the baby move? What's the heartbeat? Stuff. And like, start talking like, what are your plans? Like, how much time are you going to take off work? Are you going to go back to work? How are you guys going to work on like divide up the nighttime feedings and stuff like that, and get them to start thinking about what works for them. Like, I was a night shift nurse when my third kid was born, and my husband, their dad was in school full time during the day. And so it's like, how are we going to make this work? And our proactive option was, let's replace the bedside table with a mini fridge on dad's side and put a bottle warmer on top. And we're having one hot bottle ready to go on the top. So as soon as baby wakes up, you can pop it in. You can get one new one out of the fridge and get it on top and warm it up for the next feeding and stuff like that. But it took 3 kids to figure out stuff like that.
That's smart. That's a good
Yeah.
one. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but
no, it's school and careers with kids and a marriage. It's another level of balancing. Yeah,
yeah,
when I started in August. I mean, and there was definitely some growing pains because
uh-huh.
he wasn't really used to, you mean just drop it like I gotta go,
Right. Yeah.
like
When you get
this.
that phone call. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there was a little bit of that, but now there's been a lot of growth, and
Yeah.
it's just a lot of communication, a lot of talking, and yeah. So
Before you started midwifery school, were you stay-home mom, full-time
yeah,
stay-home mom?
yeah,
Yeah. And so now you're in school and you have 3 kids, which is already just mitigating disaster after disaster and stuff.
yeah, yeah,
And so
literally
compared to like,
surviving. Yeah.
yeah, back when you guys first got married, no kids, your house was tidy and you get up early and make his lunch for him. And then like those little things slowly start to fade
Yeah.
away. And if you're not having discussions about it, you can start to feel like, well, I'm not as important. She doesn't take care of me like she used to, kind of things. And it's
Yeah.
nothing that's like intentional. And even those thoughts on his part aren't like intentional. It's just things that like slowly start to seep and feed in. And if you don't jump in and be like, hey, I'm sorry. I used to do all these fun things for you. Let's do meal planning. Let's do meal prepping on Sundays together. We're gonna cook together, and then we can get all this stuff done. We'll have a little bit of family kind of fun time. especially your kids at like toddler and early school age, there's things they can start to do to help out with that sort of stuff and um, start making it a plan and a thing to do together, but to get some of that like emotional labor task work out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that then you do have that after work, maybe a few minutes of free time after dinner and after the kids are to bed, we're like, oh my gosh, we have 45 minutes where it's quiet.
Yeah, that's
If you pick
exactly
up
what it
10
was.
toys and I pick up 10 toys, we can watch a Netflix show.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that so as with my daughter, I don't know, I feel like toddlers it can be really difficult because my kids nursed for my daughter nursed till she was like 18 months and then my son my second my number two, he nursed
Uh-huh.
a little longer, probably like 2 years.
Yeah.
2.5 maybe. So that was a big part of like our bedtime but I think that was the biggest key was just getting them to bed at a certain time. Because it sucked when I had to get the kids to bed because I
Right.
have the boobs.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
I have
So
to
then
get
he
back
can sit
up.
down and kick his feet up and he gets that quiet time.
Yeah.
And
Well, then
he's
I
like,
gotta
I,
get back up
yeah.
to talk to you.
Yeah.
Like,
I have to shimmy away and pray that nobody wakes up. Yeah.
yeah. So it was like, oh my God. But once I could get them down, and they didn't really need me to sit with them for a long time.
Uh-huh.
That was a game changer.
Yeah.
So,
And then that's another
whew,
piece of it too, is just reminding people it's a season. Like you're right
yep.
back in that season now, 8-month old. Oh my gosh, the
Hmm.
separation anxiety at that age is huge. Like even if
Yes.
you wanted dad to put that 8-month old to bed, that probably is an absolute no-go. Like
Yeah.
right now it's all mom, which also that hurts dad's feelings so bad. It's like, dude, they're
Yeah.
not saying they don't like you. They just you're not it. You don't smell right. Literally, that's all it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Even like
Yeah.
grandparents can be like this sometimes. My dad was so offended that my daughter was like terrified of him till she was like 2. And he's like,
Oh,
why doesn't she like me? And I was like, she didn't like any dude. It's not your fault. It's like, it's
yeah.
not a you
It's
thing.
not.
Let go. Yeah.
Yep. Literally, the moment I walk away, he's just so upset.
Yeah.
Just devastated, completely
Oh my God, that's
offended.
so lovely when you have to run to a birth, especially if you get a
Oh,
call at like
yeah.
8 o'clock at night. Then like, her water broke, we're headed in, and you're just like, I'm sorry.
It's
Yeah.
gonna be rough. Yep.
It's gonna be a
Yep.
rough night. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah. But I'm trying to see if
Oh,
I missed any of my points. I talk really fast and
you're
I never follow
good.
my outlines.
No, it's
But
okay.
yeah. So, how's your school and your apprenticeship going?
It's going well. It's going
Yeah.
really, really well. Yeah.
How many
Yeah.
births do you have done?
So I have 16.
Oh, nice. Exciting.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
are you where are you? And like I think you probably said it at the beginning, but I missed it. Are you a
Oh,
CNM
so
or
I'm in Alaska. I live in a town that's about 45 minutes north of
okay.
Anchorage. So it's not like it's far from Anchorage, but it's more of a rural, like farm town kind of area.
Okay. So is that how you
Um,
know Jessica?
so yeah, so I was Jess's preceptor
No.
through her
Okay,
CPM
okay.
program. Yeah.
So that's amazing. She was my professor this semester and we just did skills. She was our skills instructor this
Uh-huh.
2 weeks ago or whatever. And she was just talking about it and she did something and I was like, how do you do that? And she was just like, my lineage. She talked about like her lineage. And then I was like, oh my God, I want to meet your preceptor. I literally thought that. So I must have manifested it here.
There we go. Yeah,
Um
so that makes you like my great grandbaby midwife now. Because Jess, no, my grandbaby. So
in a
Jess will be my
way.
baby. So you're my grandbaby midwife. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. So yeah, Jess is, I mean, she was a biology major, so she was already very in it with like that sciencey side of things, which I was a nurse, I am a nurse midwife. And so I was a pediatric nurse and a NICU nurse and then a labor and delivery nurse and then went back to school. So I've seen the sickest of the sick, the most broken, crazy, insane emergencies in the world, which gave me like a ton of confidence to just go out into the community and do this. So like it can't be worse than what I've seen in the hospital.
Wow, yeah.
Um, but then Jess like brought into it like so much more of like spirituality and information about like herbs and that sort of stuff. And so I learned as much from her as she learned from me. I just was passed her down some skills. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah. And so then we started doing this. I went to a conference in Hawaii and there was like a little midwifery school over there. And I was like, You know what we need more than we need more midwives is we need help, because in Alaska we have so many midwives and we're constantly relying on each other to help each other out, that if I'm doing 10 births a month, but I'm also helping at 10 births a month, that's exhausting. So he's
Wow.
like, how do we start training helpers, and like, can we create like a consistent curriculum? And then our goal was like, can we train up a bunch of local birth assistants, then create like an on-call schedule so that we could just, so nobody, because being a midwife is full-time, 24/7, exhausting commitment in Alaska. And it's like, so not a lot of people can do that, especially people with little kids. So a lot of people who want to work in birth can't commit to being a midwife. So like, what if we could make you a midwife helper, and so that you could commit to certain days that work with your schedule, and you could be in the birth room and learning all about birth and be a skilled set of hands. And so that's kind of how we started it. And then COVID hit and we totally changed everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Okay. And so is that like the birth of Pacific Birth?
mhm.
Okay.
Yep. And then just after COVID, I think, just kind of burnt out on Alaska. And so she's down in the East Coast and I'm up
Yeah.
here. And so we're just strictly online now and doing little speaking engagements and skills and drills and conferences. And so running our online program and stuff. But yeah, just trying to teach and just spread birth knowledge to everyone, because I feel like it's kind of gate kept and it's hard to come by. And I mean, I didn't even know what a midwife was until I was probably 20.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that was 2 years into nursing school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know what a midwife was until somebody said, "Hey, I had a home birth. You should have
Right.
one."
Right. And if somebody had told me at that point they had a home birth, I would have been like, so you wanted your baby to die?
I,
You
yeah.
know,
Well,
I would have been that judgmental, medically trained like person, because I just simply
yeah.
didn't know any better. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was super fortunate to work in a hospital in Seattle that had tons of midwives who did both hospital and home births. And whew, opened my eyes and I was like, I'm on the wrong side. I'm playing for the wrong team. I'm going back to school.
So great.
Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah. It was super fun. Any other questions or comments or thoughts? It's just two
No.
of us. This wraps up pretty quick.
Yeah, no, that was great. That was really
All right,
awesome.
sweet. I
Thank
think
you.
it's me again next week, and I forget what I'm talking about. I'll have to look.
Cool.
Yeah, sweet. Well, I'm gonna go do a 36
Hopefully
week
there'll be
home visit.
more people.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's lovely to meet you, Anne Marie,
Yes, it was really good to meet you. Thank
and to see
you.
your sweet little cute baby.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, I'll see you
Bye.
guys next week. Bye.
Yep.